Well, speaking of this possible change, at the beginning of the podcast, we talked about how, if there were a conflict on the Indian border, it would just be physically difficult for, say, the U.S. to get troops there. But later this year, the U.S. and India are supposedly going to be holding joint exercises in the Himalayas. So, does that sound like a step in the right direction?
Well, that's certainly a step in the right direction, but where they are holding the exercises is at a lower altitude. It's not at those heights. Uh, Getting to those heights, as I said, would need much more time for any young person, uh, even fit soldiers, because they would need to get acclimatized to be able to go and take part in something vigorous like fighting. But that apart, no one is at the moment imagining that American soldiers will actually fight there. But even if some equipment were to be sent, it will take time to take it there, to assemble it, and then to make it train the people. The same kind of logistics issues that you're finding in Ukraine. I mean, it was not automatic that Ukrainian soldiers were able to tackle the sophisticated equipment. They had been training for years. For the last 5 to 10 years, they had been training on Western equipment. Uh, and so when it finally was given to them, it was not as if they were strangers to the thing. So there are difficulties. And just to take this argument further to Taiwan, uh, in my book, I've outlined this scenario that supposing a war breaks out between China and Taiwan, it will not be easy for China because there is no land between China and Taiwan. So there will be logistics issues. Uh, if you land troops there eventually, howsoever you land troops, they would need to be supplied with food, equipment, and so on a continuous basis. Something of a situation that Russia faced when it first tried to go towards Kiev. So, second, even if Chinese ships brought all the equipment and so on, uh, Taiwan has enough resources to take care of at least some of the ships, and the damage could be quite substantial. The same applies to, let's say, once Chinese have landed in Taiwan and America or Japan or some other country decides to come in and help Taiwanese. If Chinese have already landed in Taiwan, then it becomes that much more difficult for a new armed force to step in because they'll face the same problems that Chinese had faced from Taiwanese initially. So, war in today's world is not going to be easy and not going to be predictable in its results. There could be many surprises, some of them very nasty for the country which started the war. And the same applies to go back to your first question to China in case it decides to launch a war against India. Because India has an experienced army, a motivated army, a battle hardened army. And it has some of the finest equipment in the field.
Plus, the difference is everyone recognizes that India is a country. So there won't be as many questions about whether or not it's okay to support them, right? I mean, the U.S. can do joint military exercises with India now, but the U.S. politically finds it hard to do the same thing with Taiwan.
Diplomacy is a strange creature. It finds different ways of approaching the same issue. So, Taiwan, for example, was the original China till China was given the membership in the United Nations of the seat occupied by Taiwan. Similarly, it was only in 70s that America shifted its position and started talking in terms of one China policy. So before that, American position on Taiwan was different, and so was that of many other countries in the world. So what happens in future with regard to Taiwan, only time will tell. But another thought I would leave with you, I'm sure all three of you are greater experts, but the fact is that Taiwan was not inhabited by Chinese people originally. So it was only in recent decades and centuries that Chinese migration took place. And in fact, for quite some time, Japan had occupied Taiwan. Uh, and it was only after, I think, if I'm not mistaken, uh, around the Second World War or so, that Japan relinquished its hold over Taiwan to China. So these claims are nebulous, but China is assertive in its claims and it interprets history as it suits it. Otherwise, if it was more conscious of history and other countries' claims, it would not have had territorial disputes with 17 countries uh, of the world, uh, either sea based or land based disputes. And it would have been more respectful of the international law. For example, as you know very well, the UN arbitration panel had ruled in favor of Philippines over the islands. And China said, no, we don't recognize the UN panel's authority. So wherever it suits China, rules come in. Wherever it suits China, it invents history. Wherever it suits China, it makes claims which are, doubtful legally.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing this information. For the audience, why don't you tell them a bit more about your book and where they can buy it?
Well, thank you so much. Amazon.com in America now has both the hardcover and the Kindle version of the book. And I think the way I have tackled the issue, wartime, the world in danger, is a message which would resonate, which would appeal to your viewers because it is an entire approach for where the world is heading, not just in terms of war, but in terms of, for example, artificial intelligence, in terms of the geostrategy, in terms of people's behavior, in terms of multiculturalism, in terms of human rights, in terms of scientific advances, in terms of what would happen in case of a nuclear war, and whether nuclear war could happen. So all these are issues which I have tried to explain in as easy to understand language as possible, and it has already become a bestseller in India, commented upon very favorably by all the reviews it has got so far. So I hope it gets the same readership in America, and it is, I believe, easily available on Amazon.com. Thank you.
So everyone likes your book except the Chinese Communist Party.
Well, I hope they read it because maybe they might change their habits and views and their worldview.
Well, congratulations on the success of your book. And again, thank you for joining us. And yeah, for anyone watching, there's loads of stuff we didn't even get a chance to get into that's in the book, especially like we didn't have a chance to even talk about Pakistan and China and India, which is a huge thing. So once again, thank you for joining us, and I do recommend the book.
Thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure being with all of you, and I've enjoyed this conversation. Thank you. All the best to you.
Yeah, after talking to him, it is like FBI Director Christopher Wray, I believe, who he was talking about, said that this needs to be a whole of society approach to countering the Chinese Communist Party, and I think we really do need to get back to the 40s and 50s and like talk about the communists. Like, seriously, like, I think a lot of people do know, hey, communism isn't good. Let's say it like it is. You know, like
I
this
don't
communist
know.
regime.
No, I think it hasn't
actually-
been tried, Chris. Real communism has not been tried.
And what was your point, Shelley?
Well, I was going to say, I think there's a danger there, which is like bringing up McCarthyism and that kind of thing again. And then the other thing is that I don't think that a lot of young people think that communism is bad.
Oh,
in
I
any
don't.
way.
Depends on what corners of the internet you go on.
Oh gosh. Well, okay, maybe I'm not on those corners of the internet, but I think that like there is generally, I mean, we didn't really learn about communism when I was in school, like the
Because
entire
of the long march through the institutions.
Well,
am
I mean,
right?
I really don't think that, you know, the high school in suburban Pittsburgh that I went to was infiltrated by communists. I think it was just that we had, you know, we spent too much time talking about the Civil War and never got to the 20th century.
Civil War. I don't know. I think there is something to it. I mean, being able to label these things in a way that people can understand is important. And yeah, I mean, the idea that like, you know, hey, this is, you know, a communist-run social media app. Is that really what you want?
I don't think that's going to work. Like,
I don't know. I'm curious what the audience thinks
this
about
might
that.
be
Would
a
this
little
be-
bit of a selective, you know, it's not going to be a general, you
So
know.
it's everything is done bit by bit.
No. I'm just saying that like the comments will not be a reflection of what the general population thinks or knows about communism.
We are the seeds of a new and better tomorrow.
I do think that people need to be educated about what communism has done in the world, but I just think that using it as a kind of pejorative is not going to be helpful.
People
because
need names and labels. You know who understands that? Communists.
That's true. But
Label
I just
them
think,
counter-revolutionaries, blah, 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 blah.
But I think that without the understanding of like the history of it, then it just sounds like you're calling somebody like a Nazi, but less effectively. Do you know what I mean? Because like I think the word Nazi on the internet means almost nothing now because it's been just used as a pejorative.
So let's make communist mean something again.
So I think the way to do that is with educating people, not just...
Yeah, you educate them about communists.
Yeah, well, I think it's just like just using it as a way to mean something negative will end up being like what is that law, Godwin's law, about how every internet...
Is that something about a cat?
No, that's the thing about how every internet argument devolves into people calling each other Hitler.
Hey, if it became people calling each other communists, I would be very happy and amused.
I feel like
I give up.
Yeah, that's exactly the opposite of the
this,
argument
this
Shelley
is
was
how
making.
it works. You just keep yelling communists until people like you just give up. And then you're the
Yeah.
only one talking loudly.
But that no one is convinced by.
Doesn't matter. They've all been given up and crushed by the relentless red wave.
Did I say I missed Chris last week?
Yeah, I believe you had erroneously said that.